First up on Columbus Perspective on the phone with me is Mr. Dwayne Siekman. He's the CEO of the Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Dave. Thank you.
Thanks for talking to us. It's Farm Bill renewal time, and this is, $288 billion bill last time it was approved back in 2008?
That is correct. It almost topped $300 billion.
From what I understand, the vast majority of it actually is the food stamp program, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, food and nutrition programs occupy anywhere from 67 to 75% of the total Farm Bill expenditures.
But it seems like the far more complicated end of it is the one that deals a little more directly with farmers, right?
That is correct. I mean, the Farm Bill, there's been a farm program in existence for decades, and originally designed to really protect consumers, to make sure there was an ample food supply. And over time, it's evolved into conservation programs, energy programs, and also a safety net for farmers that would protect them in times of such as this spring in Ohio, wet weather, floods, lots of rain, or severe drought throughout the year.
And Congress is starting to tackle this issue now in Washington, and it sounds like that $288 billion might be reduced a little bit next time around by a few $1 billion.
Well, I think, you look at what Paul Ryan of the House, of course, it didn't pass the Senate, but he proposed cuts to the farm program cuts. The Senate has proposed farm program cuts. The administration has proposed farm program cuts. So we're anticipating there's going to be cuts, Dave.
Is that going to be significant, do you think, or are there ways to trim that without having a huge impact on Ohio?
Well, I think from our organization standpoint, and what we're hearing from our members and growers across the state, is that we feel it's an opportunity to reform the programs. Our growers are taxpayers as well. They see the need to balance the federal budget, pay down some of the debt. And ag is not immune to looking at our programs, or the programs that benefit agriculture, to do that. There's some inefficient programs scattered throughout the farm bill. And so we feel, if you just take this spring as an example, in the wet weather, the current farm program offers some support, but it doesn't offer that safety net that's going to protect them. So we're looking at a stronger crop insurance title, as well as build on a program that was established in the 2008 farm bill called ACRE, which is protecting against losses, a revenue loss, versus the traditional program where farmers get a payment regardless if there's a loss on their farm or not. Our growers say it's time to reform our programs to make it a better safety net, not just for Ohio farmers, but for farmers across the country.
So if a farmer loses a good percentage of his crops, the current system isn't doing an adequate job, or what?
It is. If they've purchased crop insurance, that offers protection. But with the current system, with the direct payment, which is the one farm program that seems to be out on everybody's dartboard, it is a program that is not designed. It's essentially, it gives a little bit of money to every single farmer out there. Well, what we feel is that if times are good, much like they are now with crop prices, even though input costs are rising as well, there's not that direct payment does not offer protection. Plus, it's an expenditure that's just a payment regardless if there's a loss or not. Our growers don't feel that's the right way to spend taxpayers' dollar. There should be more of a program designed to protect the farmer in those events that are unforeseen. Adverse weather, perfect example.
So stop giving some of it out when times are good, so there's more when times are bad.
Absolutely, and it also allows to pay down some of the debt. Farm programs are not going to balance the budget. I think hopefully everybody understands that getting rid of direct payments are not going to balance the budget, but it's a step. And I think every industry, every segment of the economy needs to start looking, much like farmers, corn and wheat farmers are in Ohio, and saying, hey, we can give some too. Let's reform what we have to offer better protection for us in the future.
Dwayne Siekman joining us. He's the head of the Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association. For city dwellers and people who know nothing about farming, who are critical of the Farm Bill, and I know you hear it all the time, what is the big thing that people say that they just don't get about the Farm Bill that they're wrong about?
I think the one thing we hear time and time again. I hear it sitting on an airplane with folks around just happen to talk about the budget situation, is that farmers are paid not to plant. The only time farmers idle land is when they put it in a conservation program. And that conservation program is designed to protect waterways. And so that's not the program that we saw in the 80s, where it was a fallow program where farmers were actually paid just to leave their crops leave their land fallow. And so I think that's the big misnomer, is that the government's paying farmers not to plant. Farmers want to put seed in the ground. Now, this year it's become very difficult to get all the seed in the ground, but they're going to be giving it their best effort to do that. But farmers are not paid to leave their land without anything on it. Either it has a conservation program attached to it, or it's going to be planted.
One of the things I was reading about with the Farm Bill this time around is that over the next 40 years, the demand for food worldwide is just going to skyrocket, and some people are concerned that tight budgets are not going to allow money for research and development, for better productivity, for the explosion of need that's coming.
And I think that's a valid point, Dave. When the country talks about infrastructure, I think you need to throw research into that infrastructure component, because you're absolutely right. There's a need. There's a growing population. U.S. farmers have been tremendous with their efficiency in producing more on less land, more with less inputs. But we can't stop now. I mean, we have to see this another green revolution, if you will, in crops, much like Norman Borlaug did back in the 50s and 60s. So research is a component to ensure that we have ample food supply, and research is a big part of the Farm Bill. And research is always one of the first things to be cut, because you don't see that immediate return. Sometimes it might take years, 5, 10, 1. So we can't forget about research. We can't forget about other programs that are not huge expenditures, but are vital to the future of agriculture, not only in the United States, but worldwide.
And exporting is a big part now of Ohio farmers' income, right?
It is. I mean, exports are always a key component when you look at corn, soybeans, wheat, meat products. And it varies. The percentages vary from those crops. Soybeans has a higher export to other countries percentage than corn does. Wheat, Ohio wheat, is desirable in Egypt and other parts of the Middle East, and so it's 50% of the U.S. wheat crop is always exported. So export programs are crucial, and it's not just paying for our products to go. It's working with those other countries, overcoming some of the trade barriers, regulatory burdens that those countries place on U.S. products. It's not just sending cars overseas or other things overseas. They do put restrictions on corn, soybeans, wheat, and meat products. So it's vital to have a strong export program, research program, safety net, and the nutrition programs.
Again, Dwayne Siekman joining us. He's the CEO of Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association. Does the Farm Bill pit lawmakers, from, say, grain states against cattle states? And does the Farm Bill tend to favor one type of grower or producer over another?
I think when you look at the region, there is a regional difference in the Farm Bill, and specifically the commodity title where the programs are. You have the Midwest, which is predominantly, the corn-growing region in the country, soybean-growing region. But you have the South, what we call the white crops, cotton, rice, have a different mindset when it comes to commodity title programs. And the far west, the Pacific Northwest, the Northern Plains, in the wheat areas, they grow a different type of wheat than we do in Ohio, and so they have a different view of it. So it is very regionally based. And oftentimes, because it's regionally based, you don't see these strong programs and the most efficient programs put in place, because everybody wants to have a little bit that supports their sector of the agricultural economy.
What about the ethanol issue? That's always up for meaty discussion, it seems like.
It definitely is, and I will let your listeners know as well that the growers in the state and my board of directors are not looking at ethanol. They're looking at ethanol much like they are with the direct payments. It's time for reform. It's time to move away from the traditional tax credit program that the industry has utilized for a number of decades, and it's time to really make it a safety net approach. And the ethanol tax credit goes to the blender of the fuel. The majority of it, in over 95% of the cases, the blender of the ethanol is the oil company. So the oil company actually receives the benefit of the ethanol tax credit. We're looking at immediately phasing out VTEC, the volumetric ethanol tax credit, and transitioning to a variable tax credit tied to the price of oil. So if the price of oil is a certain level, there'll be nothing paid out, mainly because the oil companies at $100 a barrel don't need an incentive to put ethanol in their fuel system. Ethanol is trading $1 below wholesale unleaded gasoline, so there's no incentive. Oil drops down to $40 a barrel. There's an incentive. There needs to be an incentive to do that. And just this weekend, I heard one of the Saudi princes say, we need to lower the price of oil, mainly because we don't want the United States to start developing alternative forms of energy. And to me, that's pretty self-serving of the Saudis to say, we're going to ensure the United States is addicted to the oil that we're producing.
Dwayne Siekman joining us. He is the CEO of Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association. How are the farmers doing this year? We've had a horribly wet spring.
And I'm just pulling up the crop report from last week, and we got about 8% more of the corn crop in the ground. So we're at 19%. Our 5-year average is 93%. So it's been very wet. Talking to growers in central Ohio today, some of them just got back into the field. The weekend of no rain and hot weather was very good. We just hope that we keep that for another week. And farmers, with today's technology, can get a lot done in a week's time frame. But it's been very trying for farmers across Ohio and eastern Indiana.
I remember talking to a farmer a few years ago, back in 2002, actually. We were looking at some of the archive stuff here. 2002 was another really wet spring, and I talked to a central Ohio farmer who, as of May 18th or 19th of that year, had not planted anything yet. And he said in that interview with him that after about May 15th, every day that you don't plant results in a reduction in productivity by the end of the year, the amount of crop that you're actually going to harvest.
Yeah, and that's historically, I've seen those same numbers, Dave. And May 15th is really the target date to get the crop in. Here we are at almost June 1st, which is tomorrow, and we have the 71% or 81% of the crop yet to be planted. So now we can look at 2 years ago. We had a wet spring as well. Crop got in late. And the rest of the growing season was ideal. And I think that's something that the listeners have to be cognizant of, is that there's still plenty of growing season. Now, if the rest of the year is dry, hot and dry during the pollination period, that's going to impact yields. But if we get this ideal growing season, the rains at the right time after the seed gets in the ground, the heat index, the sun, let photosynthesis work, we could salvage a situation that isn't looking very good right now.
The other areas of the Midwest with the Mississippi flooding and everything, it's been a problem in a lot of areas. So might it still be a good year if Ohio can turn the crop around?
Absolutely. I mean, nationwide, we're at 86% planted. The 5-year average is 95%. The states that produce the majority of corn, Illinois is almost 100%. Iowa's virtually 100% right now. Planted Nebraska. Those are the big corn growing regions. So although Ohio is way behind, we do produce about 550 million bushels of corn. It's not going to have as drastic of an impact as, let's say, if Iowa was only 19% planted right now. It's going to have an impact, and I feel pretty confident that we're going to get a majority of the acres that we were projected to get. We won't get all the acres we were projected to get in the ground, but Ohio farmers are out there. They're going to be working, I guarantee they'll be working 24/7 for the next couple of weeks, as long as it doesn't rain, to get these crops in the ground. Well, I think one other component, Ohio produces wheat, but we plant it in the fall, and it grows throughout the winter. This wet weather has impacted somewhat the wheat crop. Some of the listeners may be hearing the wheat crop is damaged in Oklahoma and Kansas and Texas. Ohio's still in pretty good or fair to good shape, the majority of the wheat crop, and we'll be harvesting that late June, early July, and hopefully it comes through this spring in good condition.
It's amazing how much a 90-degree sunny day, how different that is than 60 and cloudy, isn't it?
whether it's dry in the ground or if it's just the photosynthesis, whether it's folks' lawns growing like crazy and weeds growing like crazy to getting the crop in the ground. It sure makes a difference.
Dwayne Siekman again. Thanks a lot for the information, Dwayne.
Thank you, Dave.